Jenny, I'm just.
You can turn me down. Turn. Say it again. Yeah, yeah. I figured that's what you were saying, because I know it said, like, you saw it today.
Yeah.
So I was just curious how you go about that. Yeah.
Are you ready for us to go live or not? Okay. Everybody ready to? You're fine. Open your soda. Don't shake it.
There you go. I like that.
Because of the little packet.
I just imagine that falling over. Last week was the phone, this week spill. There you go.
We are live on YouTube. I think our mics are muted.
Jesse, that's,
They are not. We are live on YouTube. Good evening and welcome to our Monday, March the 8th City Council meeting. It is a pleasure to have everybody joining us here and joining us for the first time on the new Radford VA YouTube page. So we're happy to have you join us there. Please subscribe to that page so you can get all the updates from us as we continue to move forward with our streaming and our evolution of what we do with our meetings. So at this time, I would like to ask you all to please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. And please take a moment to join us in a moment of silence. Thank you all very much. Right before we get to the minutes approval, I do just want to say today is International Women's Day, and I think that is an important thing to note. I'm sure we'll get to more of that as we get to comments later in the meeting. But to all the women who are serving in so many roles out there, my colleagues on council, those members of our staff present, thank you. We owe you a debt we can't repay, and we appreciate your service. Council members, I would like to ask that we hold on the minutes for December 14th till we can get a couple of corrections made to that. But do we have you had a chance to review the minutes for January 11th, 2021?
Yes, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor, there was an additional action on page 1. The third action should be stricken, and then just a couple of small errors. The date needs to be adjusted on the top, and Ms. Huntington participated remotely, but we all did because it was a Zoom meeting. But I sent those corrections to Jenny.
And same goes for the January 25th. I was also participating remotely. Just
Well, let's do January 11th first, and then we'll do January 25th. So do we have a motion from Mr. Height to approve as amended?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve as amended. Do we have a second?
second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. And then January 25th, again, we had a slight adjustment with the participation. Were there any other changes to the January 25th, 2021 minutes? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you all very much, and thank you to Jenny for pulling together our minutes from the last few months of Zoom and all the pandemic-related meetings. We do appreciate that. At this time, we will open the floor for citizen comments. You have 3 minutes. If you'd like to come down to our podium, please state your name. For the record, be sure to speak directly into the microphone so that everyone can hear you, and we will open the floor now. Seeing no mad rush for the citizen comments, we will close the floor for citizen comments. And as such, we have no council response, so we will move forward with a couple of proclamations we have this evening. I'm honored to get to share the first proclamation in honor of Geeson Caldwell's 75th anniversary. For those of us living in Radford, the Geeson Caldwell family has served families for many, many generations, and we are so honored to have the opportunity to recognize and celebrate them. City of Radford Proclamation, Geeson Caldwell Agency Recognition. Whereas Geeson Caldwell Agency Incorporated Realtors was founded in 1945 when Colonel A.R. Ott Geeson returned from serving in World War II along with his partner and brother-in-law, William Bill Caldwell. And whereas the partners established offices in downtown Radford selling insurance and real estate, and whereas Colonel Geeson also served the city of Radford as a member of council and as mayor, and whereas Mr. Caldwell also served the city of Radford as executive secretary of the Radford Chamber of Commerce, helping bring to Radford Inland Motors, now evolved into a piece of the modern Cole-Morgan Corporation, and whereas Mrs. Charlotte Pinky Geeson, spouse of Colonel Geeson, was the first woman elected to Radford City Council and the first Republican woman elected to serve in the Virginia House of Delegates representing Radford and Montgomery County, and whereas Joe Alderman began working for the company in 1972 following her sister Lois Spivey, who had worked for the agency in the late 1950s and early 1960s, and whereas Ms. Alderman became a realtor and obtained her broker's license in 1975 and real estate appraiser's license in 1991, and whereas Ms. Alderman purchased the company from the Geeson family in 1995, and whereas Ms. Alderman still serves as president of Geeson Caldwell Agency, and whereas Katrina Alderman Compton currently serves as managing broker and Robert Alderman serves as associate broker, and whereas loyal and longtime agents John Farmer, who joined the company in 1977, and Mike Johnston, who began in 1995, Dee Dee Edwards, MJ Jarrett, Becky Murphy, and office manager Raina Rickey make up the Geeson Caldwell family. And whereas Geeson Caldwell Agency has a long-held reputation for outstanding customer service and satisfaction, and whereas Geeson Caldwell Agency has helped connect many residents to their homes in Radford and has positively influenced the quality of life in this community through their support and service over the last 8 decades, and whereas Geeson Caldwell Agency has served the citizens of the New River Valley longer than any other real estate agency in the region, be it therefore proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Radford hereby recognizes and thanks the many members of the Geeson Caldwell team for their years of service and dedication to the City of Radford as they continue to celebrate their 75th anniversary year. They lived their motto of making people at home since 1945 every day and are well known for their talent and expertise with a combined 175 years in the real estate business. I would like to make a motion that we adopt this proclamation recognizing the Geeson Caldwell Agency. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And congratulations. I think they deserve a round of applause. And we're going to have to try a masked, socially distant picture, but I think we'd like to do that. Would you all please join me up front here? Actually, I'm going to ask council to stay up top if you all want to stand, but we'll ask that our guests from Geeson Caldwell join us down front.
Jesse.
Jesse. Okay.
I'm going to let you hold this and be the recipient. I'm just going to stand to the side over here. Can you get us all in here? Yeah, spread out a little bit. Come this way a little bit more. Let me help you a little bit. Scoot this way a little bit. Scoot this way a little bit. Scoot this way. There you go. All right. Are we good? All right. Congratulations. Thank you all so much. Would anybody like to say just a few words on behalf of the agency, or are you good? Well, thank you for your service. We'll do that. Thank you all so much. March is American Red Cross Month, and we do have a second proclamation. I'll turn to Vice Mayor Naomi Huntington with that proclamation.
Whereas March is American Red Cross Month, a time to recognize those who volunteer, donate blood, take life-saving courses, or provide financial donations to support an organization whose mission is to help those in need. And whereas we would like to thank all those who help here in the city of Radford by giving their time to their neighbor, donating blood, taking classes, and providing financial support to help assist those in need. And whereas the Red Cross works tirelessly to help when disaster strikes, when someone needs life-saving skills or the comfort of a helping hand. And whereas the Red Cross provides 24-hour support to members of the military, veterans, and their families, and provides training in CPR, aquatic safety, and first aid. And whereas across the country, the American Red Cross responds to nearly 70,000 disasters a year, provides 400,000 services to military members, veterans, and civilians, collects and distributes about 40% of the nation's blood supply, and trains more than 7 million people in first aid, water safety, and other life-saving skills. And whereas our community depends on the American Red Cross, which relies on donations of time, money, and blood of local residents to fulfill its humanitarian mission. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the City of Radford, Virginia, does hereby proclaim the month of March 2021 as American Red Cross Month and encourages all its citizens to support this organization and its noble humanitarian mission. Mr. Mayor, I would offer this proclamation for consideration.
So we have a motion to adopt a proclamation for Red Cross Month. Do we have a second?
Second?
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you so much. And I just want to say also for Red Cross Month, all of the elements are important. Blood drives are especially important right now. During COVID, it has been extremely challenging for the Red Cross to be able to collect blood. But here in the city of Radford, the 6 blood drives that we had over the last 12 months have been extremely well done and safe. They've all been held at the rec center, socially distanced, and everyone was masked and protected. There should be another blood drive coming up toward the end of April. So please be on the lookout for that. If you can give. There are many who cannot, and it is so incredibly important. So we thank you all very much for both of those right now. Moving on to our new business, we do have a resolution regarding Provident Resource Group. We're looking at considering a request for $40,000, up to $40,000 in revenue bonds from the city. The bond supports development, construction, financing, and furnishing related equipment purchases associated with the 88,000 square foot, 124 room hotel and 4,000 square foot conference center that is planned for Tyler Avenue adjacent to campus in the next 18 months. The project is located on the 600 block of Tyler Avenue, and Provident Group is a nonprofit organization established in Georgia as a 501c3. So, David, help us out a little bit with some of this. Let's talk about this, and then we will talk with our folks who are joining us here this evening.
Right, just one correction, Mayor, apologize, I left some zeros off, I don't know how I could miss that.
I thought it was a little more than that. 40 million.
$40 million, the city, Provident Group has requested application to the city for $40 million in revenue bonds. Those bonds, we are allowed each year to pledge a certain amount of those to qualifying agencies. This is one that would work. I will refer to Kim. She can tell you a little bit. The EDA has already considered this, approved the project last Thursday, I believe it was, and everything's ready to move forward. We're just looking for approval from council, endorsement from council on the resolution. For this, we've got a number of folks here from Provident Group, and as well as our bond council is also here. Paul, I'll probably defer to you if you want to briefly tell the council what this is all about and what their action is. That would be great.
Sure, I'll be glad to do that. So the city's EDA received an application for financing from Provident Group, Radford Properties LLC, for the project that was just been described. And I think council has talked about this project before on more than one occasion. And as indicated, the EDA took its initial action called an inducement resolution Thursday last week after holding a public hearing as required. The next step on this type of 501c3 tax-exempt financing is for public approval by I guess the highest government authority in the jurisdiction, which is you all as City Council. The EDA has sent you the materials, I believe, the copy of the resolution, the fiscal impact statement, the resolution you have before you, and the description of what happened at the public hearing. There was no members of the public appeared, so that this discussion was all by the invitees for basically representing Provident Group. Does that cover it, David, you think, as a good intro?
Yes, thank you, Paul. And this is, been a number of years since we've had a revenue bond. I believe the hospital revenue bond, Dave, you may recall that.
Well, we did that, but didn't we do some just this last fall?
And Paul, you may address that there is a difference between this revenue bond and the ones that we did back in the fall and also last year.
David, I'm going to ask you to get on your wireless there, my friend.
They were related to housing. Paul, that was the...
Paul, can you address that just a little bit so that folks that have questions about that difference? The ones last fall are related to housing. This one is a nonprofit related bond. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, yeah, so the housing deals you were referring to, there was one in, I believe it was 2019, or it was two and one, 2019. And then you all voted on one, I guess it was November, December, last year. That has not closed yet. I'm not aware of the details on that. I think it's moving along, but just on a slower pace. This would be very, very similar to that in that it's structured as the project supports the debt service. The city is not responsible for debt service. The EDA is responsible for debt service only to the extent that it receives money from the project. So they're very, very similar. Just instead of a public housing, it's the 501c3 educational and support for city purposes.
And Paul, with that, if for some reason revenue did not come from the project to support the bond, would the EDA or the city experience liability related to that?
No, it's strictly related to the project itself.
Okay. Council members, do you all have any other questions for Paul while we have him?
There are also members from the Provident Group also on Zoom if you have any questions about the project. And also John is here from University Foundation as well.
I don't have any questions about the project. My major concern was just talking about that. What is our limit with this type of bond for the city? Because this is a fairly substantial bond. Are we brushing up against our limit on any other request that might come through?
No, Virginia has a general obligation limit for cities, but this is not that kind of bond. It does not affect that at all. Number one, and number two, I think we had some discussion earlier via email about so-called bank qualification, and this does affect that. But that is my understanding is the city's not planning on any additional financing this calendar year that would take advantage of bank qualification anyway. So, and there was also discussion about the benefits outweighing that. The bank qualification issue, it does not prevent you from issuing taxes and bonds. It merely has to do with if a bank, a financial institution is involved, that the bank gets a slightly better deal based on that the so-called bank qualification for so-called small issuers.
Okay. Thank you very much. Does the council have any other questions? Cam, do you have anything you want to offer based on EDA action?
No, not at all. The
Okay.
meeting was Thursday, and EDA passed the resolution, so move forward to you guys.
Okay. Council members, what's your pleasure? Do we have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you all so much. Yes, Jenny? Oh, you're just saying goodbye. Okay. Goodbye. Thank you for joining us. Okay. This is an exciting project, and we are happy to see this continue to move forward and to be able to support it as a community. I think this is great for the EDA because it does provide not only support for the program, but some additional revenue for economic development that can be utilized down the road. So that's great. At this time, we are looking for an appointment to our Board of Zoning Appeals. There was no one that submitted specifically for this. Council members, do you all have any nominations for this board?
I until recently, did not realize that there was
Vacancy.
a slot available.
Okay.
So I would suggest that we, now.
Table it for a couple weeks.
Request,
Try to get
some applications.
Well, and we also had a member who had applied for the jail board last time, who we were unable to seat, and we can reach out to her to see if she does have an interest in this as
That's a
well.
great idea.
If that's interesting.
Yep.
Okay, so we can do that. So we'll just defer that until our next meeting on March 22nd, and we will go from there. At this time, we also need to look at Appropriation Ordinance 1726.27 in the amount of $180,341. That's an allocation of $105,448 and an additional $74,000 through our Community Development Block Grant Program. David, let's talk a little bit about COVID, where we are with this and what we're doing. We are looking to provide some support for the Women's Resource Center and New River Community Action. Can you just tell us a little more about that? Or we'll turn it over to Melissa, I guess.
I'll turn it over to Melissa.
Okay.
She's been keeping up with this really good program for some of our agencies.
If you remember back in May, we had to amend our action plan to incorporate the CARES funding into this. We received $105,000 at the point in time. We knew at some point we're going to get an additional allocation, so we waited to get this appropriation. We will have to do another amendment on our action plan to incorporate that additional $80,000. Up till this point, we've Radford Fairlawn Daily Bread has utilized pretty much all of the allocation that we've appropriated to them, as well as the Women's Resource Center, Radford Bobcat Backpack Program, as well as New River Community Action has spent about 2/3 of the funding that was allocated. So they really are utilizing it for the need that is required by HUD guidelines. So I will be working on putting out that amendment to you within the next week or so we can get that moving forward and the funding spent.
Okay. Council members, do you all have any questions?
As you all are aware, there's been lots of fits and starts and stops with the COVID process, with everything that has gotten extended. There is some reporting that is now concluding in March, some that concludes later this about October, and then the remainder of it in December. So there is some other programs, and Melissa also has some in transit.
Yeah.
So you'll still continue to see these over the next few months as we go through, and of course waiting to see what happens with the stimulus that got approved on Saturday, how that
Right.
ultimately ends up getting worked out in-house and ultimately back to the localities. Radford is on that list to receive some funding.
And with that, do we know any time deadline for the expenditure of that money, similar to what happens with the CARES money?
Of this,
Well, not only our CDBG money, that's annual, correct? I mean, that has to be done by the
first-
end of the fiscal year.
No, actually for the CARES funding, our allocation is extended over a couple of years.
Okay.
So we have a longer period of time as well as anything that's been provided by FTA. So ours
Okay.
aren't as strict as what you've received through the state, so we
Okay.
have more flexibility.
The reason I'm
the
asking is,
first two rounds are done. You know,
what I would like to do, I think this is awesome, and I love the Women's Resource Center and the service they provide in our community action, but what I'd like to do is, since we've got a little more time, is maybe for us to have a work session and talk about that, especially once we get the funding from the federal government for this most recent stimulus, to talk about what this 2-year window looks like and what our intentional areas are going to be, to see if we want to plan some things out a little further. And I mean, I know we're meeting immediate need and there's so much need, but there's so many other needs in the community too that I think we could talk about. And I just wanted to check on that because I knew we had some limits and I didn't know where we were in terms of what we had to spend by a certain date and where we had to go.
Yeah, we'll just have to make sure that CDBG is directly hitting the target and
Yep.
the objectives that are written out by HUD. So we just have that discussion, but those might be a little bit stricter in terms of
Sure.
what we can and cannot use, so we'll have to have this discussion.
Well, and just to make sure.
These are specific to CDBG funds.
Yes, and I get that, and I just want to make sure we're hitting all those
Absolutely.
points that we need to. And again, I have no issues whatsoever with the two recipients this evening. I just want us to think intentionally, since we have the gift
Oh,
of
it's been
time.
additional, yeah, there
Yeah.
was multiple recipients who had received those.
Right.
Not just the two.
Does council have any other questions?
I do for David. So, given that there's guardrails placed on the CDBG money, and if we're having a work session, I think it'd be probably prudent to look at all the buckets of COVID funding and determine those guardrails. We're not just speaking in general, we're speaking
Right.
specifically to each funding source and the restrictions thereof. Is that?
Well, and looking at all the possibilities.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that's the piece, you know, Melissa is such a great guardian of our CDBG money, and certainly every year to put together that action plan is challenging because we have so many areas we want to support and things we want to do, but there may be other opportunities for us, and that's the main thing I wanted to think about. Since we have the gift of time, last year we were so blessed with money, but time was short, and things had to be received by certain times and certain dates. Since we have a little time, if we can do that, that'd be
Sure.
perfect. So, with having discussed this, is there any further discussion?
Just a quick question, and I'm sorry, none of my mics are working, so I'm just going to talk real loud. It's okay. So for the future grants, what we're looking at, we may have different restrictions, different guidelines where the CBDG, is it working now? Oh, okay, hello. So what I was saying is for the future, right now I know we were talking about this particular kitty, which is closely monitored. Some of the other grants that we have coming in the pipeline, perhaps, are they a little bit broader in scope?
My understanding and what it looks like at this point is that if Radford gets any money, it will go to supplant our lost revenue. So we won't have any,
Okay,
we're just going to make up for the
we're
losses
just
that you all
making up
heard
for the
about in the
deficit.
budget. We'll put those
Okay.
back into reserve. So really, the only thing that we're looking at is the money that Melissa's talking about
Okay.
with CDBG. There could be some other, I've not read all the.
There's a lot to it, so I mean, I think it's something, there are several things related to COVID connection specifically, and I just wanted us to, you know, think through it, since we have the benefit of time.
Yeah, it may go, some other agencies will probably receive some money, and the schools should be getting some as well. So we'll let you know as we know more, but that's all I currently know is what we're working with tonight in the appropriation. So we're just noting the receipt of the funds, and then we can go back out from there.
Any other questions?
I'd just like to make a comment. My husband recently joined the board of New River Valley Community Action. He's a volunteer. He receives no compensation, but I did want to just go ahead and disclose that just so that everyone was aware that I do have that relationship with that agency.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve appropriation ordinance 1726.27 in the amount of $180,341?
So moved.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
second.
A motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Having heard 4 affirmative votes, we can dispense with a second reading if so desired. Do we have a motion to do so?
So moved.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second to dispense with a second reading of appropriation ordinance 1726.27. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you all very much. And Jenny, I'm going to give you just a minute because I want to make sure we can get the presentation on the monitors and the stream if we can.
You're going to need this.
Okay. Technical, we're going to get there. For, I guess, 30 years, Radford City Council has talked at one time or another about having a performance venue in the city of Radford to handle things ranging from historical outdoor dramas like The Long Way Home or Mary's Walk to Freedom, concerts, shows, programs, community events, and things along that line. And many times it's been brought up, many locations have been looked at. In a work session, really, it's been 2 years ago and then again last year, this council, the council that preceded it, made this a priority for the community because we saw the link to having a performance space and economic development for the city. That's all pre-COVID, that's all in a very different world than we were in before. As such, we made a request that we could get a study to determine if this even makes sense for the city, look at potential types of venues, locations, things along that type. Thompson and Litton was requested to develop some preliminary schemes for us, and Barry Collier is here with us this evening. We're going to give Jenny just a chance to get this where we can share it. If you can't get it on the stream, if you can take this camera behind me and point it at one of the screens, we may be able to do that. I know you are. But before we get into the discussion, because this is important for us to hear and important for our community to hear. Economic development with public venues has become more and more common. In fact, just today there was a report in the Roanoke Times talking about a new venue that could have as many as 30,000 people in Lynchburg. So a very different type of regional venue. But I think communities are seeing the positive impacts of event centers, of amphitheaters, of gathering spaces. And during the pandemic, those outdoor type spaces have been invaluable to communities as it has allowed for activity to continue. Are we good? Okay. Can you switch to the camera so that it's the back camera pointing at one of the monitors? Okay. Well, joining us here from Thompson Litton is Barry Collier. Barry, thank you. And if you'll speak right into that mic to help narrate this for everyone, and I do appreciate it.
I will do my best. I'm not a fan of microphones. Mr. Mayor and the rest of the City Council, thank you for having me back here tonight to talk about this. As you kind of mentioned, this is something that we've been working on and then kind of hit a little roadblock. And it was actually just about a year ago that I think we kind of first developed the PowerPoint that we're actually going to look at this evening. And just as you mentioned, last year we kind of met and talked about the benefits of a multi-use event community center within the city, something that could be used for concerts, a farmer's market, theatrical performances, food trucks. And just with what it would take to actually build that, what it would do, could it be phased to help the city out and come in different components? Some of the important pieces were a stage for theatrical for bands. Would it be elevated? Would it not be? Vendor spaces, something we consider almost as wings, where you could move a farmer's market or have additional space, and obviously public restrooms. So what we did is we've gone through and we've looked at kind of a couple different iterations of one that's kind of all-inclusive in some ways and then kind of more economical, and then how it could be broken out into phases and what it would look like from a really preliminary range of cost. So when it started, we looked at various example venues to look at material types, seating types, other amenities within the community centers, such as you can see kind of a water feature in the middle image there, and just what else it could actually be. Because it's located in our city, we also want to look at materials that reflect what is the city of Radford, not something so much on the industrial side, but something that would very much fit in with the fabric of the city and where it would be located. So multiple locations and sites have been discussed and considered over time. This study primarily focused on Glencoe Field. It's approximately 2.76 acres, including the Glencoe Mansion, and it does currently hold and have different events, sporting events. I actually just came from youth football practice this evening. So it does already get used for several events like we had discussed. Moving a little bit more in, the proposed site's actually about an acre, and it is really the grass field to somewhat of the southwest of the actual Glencoe Mansion. Looking at some of the existing site elements that are already there, it's obviously the Glencoe Mansion, the newer train viewing platform, the Mary Draper Ingalls statue, and then also near the Mary Draper Ingalls statue is the potential for a future picnic type area as well. And then one of the other benefits to this actual site is its proximity to potential shared parking. There's the Cole Morgan parking lot, the municipal building lot, Central Square, and obviously all the parking in front of the restaurants in front of Central Square. All of those areas add up to about 600 parking spaces already. So this is a little bit more of the actual site. Some of the other benefits are that it's already relatively flat. There are some of the utilities running along Robertson, and it's also nice because there aren't many utilities running through the site, and we do know that there is power already available to the site. So as we mentioned, one of the main elements is a stage. we were considering what would be an elevated stage, and this is very diagrammatic in nature, just to show and give elements and kind of what is possible. What we see here is kind of what would be an elevated stage of about 1,600 square feet or 40 by 40, and that is kind of a typical stage for a 10 to 12 person band, and also what's kind of recommended for theatrical performances. Now, this particular area would also include a toilet for stage members or various acts that are up there, as well as some built-in storage. Directly across from the stage will be a covered kind of vendor area, again with its own kind of public toilet facility. Now, this vendor area was kind of thought about and discussed as something very similar to a farmer's market type, where you have certain stalls almost. It'd be an open area facility, but you're kind of limited in that 10 to 12 foot width area for a particular vendor.
Can you point to where you're talking
A
exactly?
little dot.
That lower area
There
next
you
to the
go.
parking lot.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, thank you.
Then, in addition to kind of to finish up that scheme, is on the left and right of the field area, some stabilized turf area. And what that is it's just a combination of gravel and turf to give a better surface where you could do additional vendors or food trucks, or you could actually bring vehicular traffic onto the site without worrying about mudding up and tearing up the field. So that's what you see on the left and right side of the field. Then kind of in that light, I don't know if it's a gray or a transparent white there in the center, is what's kind of left of the field. It's approximately 12,000 square feet. For reference, you can kind of see the football field outline underneath of it, and that's approximately 20,000 square feet. Option 2 it has the same basic elements, except they're a little scaled down in some way. So this is a smaller stage of approximately 450 square feet. But again, it's the right size for a 10 to 12 piece band. It's much smaller for theatrical performances. This stage would not include bathrooms, would not include storage. It is solely kind of just for we want to get a stage so that we can use that for performances or other works. Again, we continued with that covered vendor area, and this is also very reminiscent of a lot of other farmers markets that you see, where it kind of makes this angled in this L pattern, where you have a central hub, in this case the stage, to draw in activity, but you also have the winged areas for your vendors and for different stalls. On the bottom left side, again, would be public toilets. And then again, going around the site, the larger kind of backwards L to the right-hand side is that stabilized turf area, which is good, again, for vehicle traffic on the site without damaging the grass. It also picks up the power that's already on the site, which can also be spread around the site, either on the fence, which is kind of the red line, which might be a little hard to see on the screen, but there's both versions would be fenced. And this field, I believe, is approximately 11,500 square feet, so slightly smaller. So then, just breaking down what the two schemes included, obviously they both have the same elements: a stage, an elevated stage, covered vending area, and then kind of a turf area, which is kind of your overflow vendor area. The maintaining some aspect of the field, so obviously you can bring out spectators and guests, and then elements of fencing. And the fencing was something that was discussed in case, depending on what's going on, as the activities for, I know Craft and Draft was in the field a couple of years ago. Whenever you have alcohol, you have to fence it in to control who comes in and out. So that was the thoughts behind the fencing. And then in terms of one of the key elements kind of moving forward will be to determine what do we actually want to do with the stage or with the venue area. What do we see as being the main draw? Because you can use that to really size the stage, which will end up being one of the critical pieces of it. So when you're looking at that, we have a couple of different sizes based on what the users are going to be. 5 to 10 piece bands, kind of the optimal side is 320 square feet. 8 to 10 piece, you get a slightly larger, 384. A 10 to 12 piece band is just under 450 square feet. And then obviously you see if you want to do theatrical performances, your stage gets quite a bit larger. And kind of based on that information and what we were able to put together with the field, with the remaining size of the field, we wanted to know about how many occupants you could get in there. Some of that's based on building code. It would probably be some conversation with Chris on how all of that would work as well. But we're looking at, you could still fit potentially 800 to 2,400 people in the field, or 767 to 2,300 people in the field, kind of with the area that was highlighted. Again, that's kind of giving some thought to, are they in chairs? Is it one of those events where you kind of bring your own blanket and you sit down and you and your family kind of sit down on a blanket? But again, that was done to kind of get an idea of what would be required for toilet fixtures, and that's important because on one of these next slides, we start looking at costs. Toilets and bathrooms really drive up the cost of whatever's going to be needed. And you can see kind of based on the code required numbers, you need quite a few toilets to apply or to supply what is required. But it would be a recommendation that you put a smaller number and then offset it with temporary toilets when needed. Now, these scheme costs are fairly generic in the breakdown, but they're again wanting to emphasize that the project can be phased, and again, focusing on the main parts. I'm actually gonna look at the bottom of the slide first. So if we're looking at the stage is the main important piece of the project, you'd be looking at either for the first scheme, which was the 1,600 square foot stage in the neighborhood of $900,000. Again, that includes construction, site work, A&E fees, and minor light and sound infrastructure. And that's something worth touching on, the light and sound infrastructure. So these schemes, honestly, because at this stage, it's too soon to know what would actually be required in terms of light and sound. It was really more of a setup for some generic, possibly stage lighting, but then if it's tied back into another building or if it's tied back into a control anywhere, just some of that type of infrastructure, not the actual lighting, not the actual controls. And you can see from scheme 1, because it includes the toilets and includes storage, and it was a much larger stage, it's $900,000. The the scheme 2, which was the stage and minor improvements, but that was really just a stage. That's $300,000. Again, it's the stage cost, some site work, A&E fees, and minor light and sound infrastructure, so that they all are kind of compared the same. Then if you went with the full schemes for either one, obviously they were both very similar in terms of all of the elements that are provided and even size-wise outside of the stage. It's 2.4, potentially up to 2.4 for scheme 1 and 1.2 for scheme 2. And again, it kind of includes all those same elements: construction, site works, and contingency, fees, sound and light infrastructure. And we did also look, one of the things that we looked at for these estimates was pre-manufactured restrooms, which may or may not be the right way to go. They tend to be expensive. They tend to be in that $500 to $600 a square foot range. So even looking at a 600 to 800 square foot bathroom, you're easily in the $300,000 to $600,000 range, which is what makes up, like I said, a bulk of that cost number.
And neither of these two schemes call for public restrooms, correct? Especially scheme 1 for the lower level. I'm sorry, for just the preliminary.
So they both do have them.
But the preliminary, the lower level cost structure that you just pointed out, those don't include public restrooms.
Just the stage.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I may have misunderstood you.
I'm sorry. So for scheme 1, the stage, those, when you're saying restrooms and storage, that's for
solely at the stage,
not for public use.
Correct, and that would be an accessible bathroom, probably just a 1 or a 2 person bathroom for somebody that's using the stage, or
that's
who's
what I was
up there
curious
for a
about.
performance.
Thank you. Yeah.
And then you're correct. Scheme 2, that does not include any type of bathroom facility.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And I think with this, from what our understanding was to give you an idea, I think parking and the number of people that could be at the venue, this gave you a pretty good idea and gave us an exercise to go through with Barry, the kinds of things to put into the project. So you would still, if you went with scheme 1, scheme 2, the base level, you would have everything you need for your stage and to accommodate the stage, but then you're going to still have porta-johns and things like that. Sure. And blanket seating, things like that are going to be, the amenities that are not there, and as you work towards a future phase. But I think one of the main things of the project is to see if your numbers are getting pretty close when you start calculating events and $5 a person or $10 a person, those kinds of things, because you're wanting this to be the possibility of a revenue generator for you and to bring people to our community. We're not looking solely at them coming to buy a ticket, but hopefully they're going to be in our restaurants and down on Main Street, in the brewery and other places in our community that are going to help bring revenue to us, and then hopefully spend a day here, maybe at the river earlier that day, spend the night in a hotel, so those kinds of things. So we try to get as many pieces. Deb is here. Deb and Kim and Melissa and I and Jay's not with us, all met, talked about the project, tried to bring together every element we could think of that had been in our couple of conversations with you all, because y'all met. As David said, this has been talked about for many, many years, but the council's talked about it for the last 2 or 3 years and wanted to get something in mind. So I think Barry's done a really good job of giving us an idea, you know, a footprint of what this could look like. And you could take this, if you don't like the site and want to go somewhere else, you could take this information and start plopping it down, expand it in your mind. He can expand it on another site or do something different with this one. But it's mostly to get you an idea of getting started and trying to move forward with something, you know, if you want to in the coming months.
Barry, did you have anything else you wanted to show us, or can we go through and do some questions?
That was the end of what I had, so please
Okay.
feel free to ask questions.
I have a couple to start with. Can we go back to the different visuals of the two schemes? So
Particular.
this is what, when we had talked about this site, this was always kind of what I had envisioned. Do you not see that having capability of potential additional seating, should we choose to, on the hillside area and a little further back if we wanted to do that? Or is that a possibility?
Yeah, it's a possibility. We kind of limited what we were looking at to just the field because you're going to get into some additional
Right.
costs and terracing and kind of just stabilizing and working into the hill. But it's definitely a possibility, and or even to start just grass seating as is on the hill. But it would definitely be a possibility, and it
Well, that's
is.
what I wonder, because that, you know, the difference between the two schemes is sort of stage visibility. And when we've had some events there, we've kind of gone to that corner because it gave us the largest overall area for that. And I think your numbers look like they were between 1,200 and 2,400 or so-ish for either scheme. Would the larger stage work in this configuration, or would that not work with what's available?
The stage itself would work. It's going to come out a little bit more, obviously, into the field. It may be a little more awkward if the wings is kind of what we'd call them, those vendor areas. But it would all, this is very much, I want to pick up this piece and put it here. I want to pick up this piece and put it here.
Okay.
It would work. You may have to look at some of the transition. They may just get a little awkward, but it would work, yeah.
And if we were to, can you go back to the cost page with some of the estimates? With the $900,000 stage, that's more than just a concrete pad. That's an actual elevated stage and then a covered area over that stage?
Correct. So we didn't go too far into the actual construction yet, other than kind of some of the materiality that we looked at that at the beginning and just making it fit with the surrounding. But it's an elevated stage. It would have a roof. We went back and forth on some of the discussions of, is it enclosed? Is there just a nicer visual background? All of that is still kind of can be determined or could be added. But yes, it would be an elevated covered stage.
Okay. I'm going to go around the horn and see what folks think, or what questions they have. Naomi, do you have any questions?
I don't think I have any questions right now. I thank you very much for giving us this information. It gives me a lot that we obviously didn't have before, and I particularly am struck by the limitations of the cost limitations provided by the number of public restrooms that would be required according to the capacity. That's not something that I had thought of before, and I think it is a really good piece of information for all of us to have. So thank you for everything.
Jesse, what questions do you have?
So both schemes are covered? Both of
Yes,
the-
that is
okay.
correct.
But you're not exactly sure of what the materials would be?
Correct. I mean, we've kind of gone through some assumptions that there's going to be brick and some heavy timber most likely. The roof of this building is kind of a metal standing seam roof, so it would make a lot of sense to use those similar materials, just given where it's located, what it's surrounding with this building, with Glencoe up on the hill.
It would fit with the feeling of these structures around it.
Correct.
And just for a visual of the two different sizes, in Scheme 1, is there another stage that you can think of that's similar in size, and the same with Scheme 2, just to kind of give us all a little visual of something? opposed to just raw measurements?
The larger stage, I think that might be close to the Floyd Fest main stage. The smaller stage, I don't necessarily want to use Floyd again, but there's the little amphitheater park. It would be a little bit bigger than that stage. I mean, they are kind of considerably different sizes. It's almost the larger stage is almost 4 times the size of the option 2 scheme.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thanks.
Onassis, what do you have?
Yeah, mine is more, not question specifically for you. I think it'd be more of a discussion if we were to look at this as a viable option. I guess with Chief Dodson and David, given that the location that we've chosen, Glencoe, is still sort of somewhat adjacent to residential, what are the noise ordinance concerns or those kind of things? Those are things that I'll have questions about in terms of we're having a concert at that location specifically. How will that impact the Sal's of the world, the Pop Bazaars of the world, the people who live in the residential communities, one street over, right? So those kind of things. And then I guess I'll be more inclined to use your analogy last week, a bird in the hand is worth more than 2 in the bush. That analogy you guys used last week for the Scott Hill situation, 2 weeks ago for Scott Hill, is that I'd be more inclined for an event that is portable, that can be used to build the demand and build the draw and use those revenue streams to then build something of a larger scale. So not so much as a Field of Dreams build it, they will come approach, but more portable so we can actually take these events within the different communities within Radford so we can engage the people of Radford and have small vignettes and events within those communities. And then as we build up the demand, then we can look forward to something of a more fixed capacity like this. And I'd be concerned about the limitations, because let's say if we have portable, we can do it Bissett, weather goes bad, we can relocate it somewhere else, and then we can engage people within Radford. So we're more concerned. We're not there yet, so the questions aren't specific for you. It'd be more for discussion for us later on.
Forrest, what do you have?
Yeah, just a point of clarification. Let's call the cheaper one like the basic package, so to speak. Sure. And this might be a question for David, but could we move forward with potentially like with a basic package with an idea of moving forward, sort of like once there is more money that has been brought in because of these events, move to the next stage, so to speak. Is that a possibility, or do you kind of have to choose one and then move forward?
So that's very much a possibility. I think that was one of the reasons we were looking into doing the study this way. I'd throw out there the exception to that might be the stage. If you start out with the smaller stage, it would be a little harder and maybe even more cost expensive to then try to go back and enlarge the stage at a later date. But there's nothing to say that you couldn't even start with one of the covered vendor areas. Mm-hmm. You often see those as kind of concrete slabs, post and beam type wood construction, than just a standing seam metal roof. Like something very easy just to get it started. Or in the scheme 2, just the smaller stage is something to get it started. But it was very much set up with the thought in mind of how can we take little pieces of this to build it into a larger event type center.
Okay.
I do like your question, though. I think kind of to extend and expound on that a little bit. So I think what he's saying too is like, is there no way to design that initial build of the stage to kind of keep in mind that we have the thought later in the future to maybe expand the stage? Could you build it with the ability, even the roofing, to step that up a little later?
You can, but I think anytime you build something, and even if you build it with the intent of adding on to it, you're going to have to do some reconfiguration or adjustments to the original piece to expand it. Now, it doesn't mean you have to totally demolish it and start over, but you'll have to do some rework of the original one to expand it.
Because you're talking about structural, adding to the structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah.
But what you're saying is, for example, like one of the wings that might be portion of the farmer's market, if that were the direction we were to go to, could serve as a performance space to begin with, and then actual construction of an elevated and more substantial stage could take place as part of a different phase, for example.
Correct.
So, to your point, we could, if that was a decision we made, like the upper wing there that's adjacent to the parking area, could perhaps be constructed as an, initial performance space and then to build from there. Well, council, I guess a couple of the questions that I have, I've already asked questions about this, but I'll ask questions of us. Is this something you would like to see some more time spent on to develop other possibilities and for us to have further discussion if it's something we want to build to look toward in the next few years?
What I love about this presentation is that it really seems as if council is presented with a choose your own adventure.
Yep.
We get to, it sounds as if there's so much flexibility built into your thinking, and, it's really going to be on us to determine what we can commit, what we can't, what direction we would want this to go into. And I can speak for myself. One thing that before we can advance these, the actual project itself, I need more information about, what could we expect to gain in revenue? How would we be staffing this? Sort of the organizational side to go hand in hand with the actual physical structure itself. So I might suggest that a work session would be a really good thing for us to do so that we can continue having those conversations as council.
And then I think what might be important as a part of that too is to get an idea, if we chose to go more with the vendor space starting out, what the cost would be to maybe have that as phase one even. I mean, I think, when we started this conversation, obviously it was pre-COVID, and so we had covered on some of the things like noise. That's one of the reasons we pocketed it down there, and we were looking at facing the stage a certain way and ending events at a certain time. So that was, several years ago when we first started that conversation. So I still think it's important. I still think it's an important conversation because I not only see it as something that's revenue building, but I also see that it's something that is value added to our citizens. And if COVID has shown us nothing, it's that, that expansive outside is really darn important, something we have always thought, but now we're even more convinced of. So I think it also, not just what's the bottom line, what it's going to bring in, obviously what the cost will be, but also keep in mind, just the value for our citizens.
Well, one of the things you might want to think about, since Barry has kind of made it clear, and that's one of the things that we had chatted a lot about, is that you've mentioned stage several times. That's your base. That's what you're going to start with. So, if you've got an idea that that's what you may want to start your investment, and this is an investment, maybe we can get Barry to look a little more detailed at that stage. And I guess in my mind, I was thinking that if you built the appropriate size stage to hold a number of different things, even though you may not be able to get a truck up there, you could easily, it's going to be handicap accessible anyway, disabilities, those kinds of things. But it probably could be large enough that you could put a number of farmers market vendors under a roof and start you could cover at least several things on your tick list, special events, farmers market, things like that would be covered. Folks would have to walk over to it and then start building off of that. And I think that may give you a little bit better idea, because the examples Barry gave, and started looking at the ones at the beginning, and all of us have been different places and seen all kinds of different sizes. So whatever you start with is what you're going to live with. So, if that's the investment, that's the best way to say, hey, we're going to move forward, then that's the best place to go. And what Naomi said earlier, yes, we've got to look. It's more than Deb or Kim can do when you're looking at Eventbrite and places like that. We've got to have somebody on board that's helping us, whether it's, we've got to figure out if is that for the year, or is it half-time? Is it half-time? Think about ball games. Part-time, excuse me. Part-time, or 6 months out of the year that you're scheduling events, things like that. But as we know, I think probably we're finding the holidays one of the times we're getting more interest. We're staying really busy from about Thanksgiving, and once we get past COVID, we hope all of that's going to return to free everybody up to meet and be together and things like that. So, from that, well, really roughly Halloween all the way through to Christmas is pretty busy time. So it's not just the summer months. You may have some outdoor concerts, but then moving into that special event space. So think about that a little bit, because if that's something you would like to do and everybody's in consensus that you'd like to see a little bit more on the stage, I think that's going to be probably the most helpful. And in my mind, I think that's the next logical step. I can't remember. I think Barry, we may have a little bit of money left in the project. So if Barry knows that's the direction you want to go before we have our work session, maybe we can get him to boil that down. And again, whether you stick at this location or go somewhere else, that stage is one you can take with you, because you're going to know the investment and know where it needs to go. And he's only going to put it in places where we know we can get water and sewer, because we've got to have that to be able to support the bathrooms. The bathrooms are going to be the most expensive part of this project. You've got to have enough of that to make it go. And you're right, the modular ones are expensive, so it may be that we want to look at stick-built at some point. But if that sounds logical to you all, we can sit down with Barry and maybe work through that next piece, and in a month or so have you an update.
That's what I'm looking for. Do we have a consensus among council that we would like to proceed at this point, get a little more information, and have a work session in the next 30 to 45 days?
I support a works. I think this is too far in the future, personally. I think we should exploit the existing resources we have that generate revenue through the rec center, exploit our softball fields, exploit our basketball programs, generate revenue from the things that we have, and to create the funds to then source this, start with a temporary stage that's portable, that we can have various events throughout the city, generate the demand, generate the money, that we can then fund something like this. Because we've already, I'm assuming the sunken cost has already gone into paying to have this initial study done, correct? We've already paid to have this done?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, exactly. So we were used taxpayer money to have this done, when we haven't looked at some of the basic things that we can leverage now, such as softball tournaments, such that brings people to our town, our city. Looking at the food truck rodeo, which was very successful. If not for COVID, I think it would have been phenomenally successful if not for COVID. So I'd be more inclined to look at exploiting what we have now to generate the revenue from a business perspective. Generate the revenue first, then build. This is aspirational. I love this concept. I think we're not there yet financially. I don't want to burden taxpayer money on something that we can leverage revenue sources first to generate the demand and revenue, and then do this later. I love this, but I don't think we're there yet, personally. So
We can also look at temporary staging.
Yeah.
To give you an idea if there is a step in the middle. That should be seen as, we can take a look at that, see what's out there available, whether it's rented or something we can move around to different venues for 4th of July and other things. So we can take a look at that. I think it'd be pretty expensive for this part of it.
Forrest, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's worth further discussion. I don't think I know enough yet to be able to make a solid decision. So I definitely hear what Onassis is saying. I don't want to be add any burden to the taxpayer. So I think it's important to have these discussions. And if it's not something we can do right now, I definitely would like to keep an open eye on doing it in the future. So it's not a wasted conversation regardless, in my opinion.
Okay, Naomi?
Yeah, I was just going to say to Onassis that I agree with you that this is very aspirational right now. When we began having these conversations, gosh, was it last year or was it 2 years ago?
It was 2 years ago.
When I thought it might have been even 2 years ago. When we first began these conversations, we were, of course, in a very different posture than we are now. And so I think that we are probably all giving a very critical eye to whether or not this, quite frankly, is really, if it's the right time and the place. Our city has a lot of needs, and whether or not we're going to put an amphitheater above some of the much more needs right now. I don't know that any of us knows that yet. But having said that, I do think that it is instructional to continue having the conversation just to see where and what could possibly come out of it. But I do think it's going to become incumbent on us to do more to provide exactly what we're looking for. And it's going to be our hard job to come up with that very specific target. David, correct me, did I hear that you said that we still have a little bit of money already allotted, so we would need to put any more towards this if we have any expanded, is that correct?
There is some left, yes.
So it's not newly apportioned, it wouldn't be newly appropriated funds, it's money that we've already committed. So I think that I hope that might make you feel a little bit better, but I think that you raised some very valid points, but it doesn't hurt us to have the conversation.
And I'll just add in a couple of thoughts, and I don't disagree. It would be great if those things that are pre-existing with the recreation center and the softball fields and all those wonderful places we have in the community were spinning off revenue that then we could say, okay, there's 5,000, here's 10,000, here's 20,000, this is how we can make this work. I think when we were first beginning discussions and then as we continued on with this, one of the things that we were very concerned about was having a space where we could consistently have a farmer's market and other vendor-related activities, because that was a consistent issue that was brought up, and there is cost associated for the different organizations and programs with that. And one of the challenges with the portable stage concept is all of the infrastructure you sort of have to build when you go place to place to place to place. We've had concerts in Radford for decades. Main Street concerts, concerts just adjacent to this in the Central Square parking lot, concerts on this field. And one of the challenges we've had with that has been so much of the potential revenue that could be generated is really eaten up by having to rent a stage or purchase something or have lighting purchased, have things that we have as part of that cost. So I think that was kind of our mindset with this. One of the things we looked at was overall quality of life and overall ability to enhance some of the things we currently have in place. Right now, if you look at our meals and sales tax, it's down a little bit because of COVID, but when we were looking at it, we were around the $1 million level. We thought if this could increase things anywhere 10 to 20% in the course of a year, which is not a completely unreasonable target, there's $100,000 to $200,000. That revenue alone could generate the tax dollars, even with the larger scheme of $2.4 million over a 30-year payout. That's about $80,000 a year. So that's where I feel like this is worth a discussion, because this is an investment similar to our rec center investment that we made. And the rec center was $12 million or so. Some of the other investments we've made in the community, we've had to make the investment with the understanding that we knew these were possibilities for down the road, and this is how it could come back. I don't think we've ever really been in enough of a surplus to say here's 100,000, here's 60,000, here's 80,000 that we know of already. There would be a leap of faith with some of this, but I'm going to go back to something that I'm going to mention later in my council comments. At one time, Bissett Park was not a given, and it was a huge leap of faith on the part of the city to try to create an asset that would then pay off for many years. So having said all of that, we'll come back to this. If it sounds good with the general consensus of council that we would like to see some additional information so we can know exactly what a phase 1A might look like and what we could potentially look at, whether it is portable or something at this location or something at another location. But I don't want to wait too long. I will tell you, time is of the essence for us to help envision what the next iteration of our community looks like. Things are changing. COVID has moved that up very quickly. And it's incumbent upon us to embrace a path and for us to start moving in that direction sooner rather than later. Even just a year, 2 years, 5 years delay may put us in a very different position moving forward. So having said all that, if that is the general consensus of council, I think that makes sense. Something in the next 30 to 45 days. I give that little bit of extra time because I know we're in budget season. But I do think that by mid-April, we would want to be back together maybe for a separate work session to talk this through, to begin to hash some things out at a greater level, and to start thinking for the next little bit.
And I think when we're talking about, I know, again, when we first started talking about this, as Councilwoman Huntington had mentioned, we were very interested to see how these events would be run, how tickets would be sold. But I have to say, now that we're at this juncture of maybe phasing it, what I have found is that in our community, a lot of our activities are citizen-directed and organized. So what we do as a city is support their ventures. So it may be, in my opinion, maybe even a little bit too early when we're talking about phasing for us to look at truly organizing those sorts of bigger concerts that we had so hoped to be able to do. Maybe, we are going to lean more towards those community grassroots movements, which we see a lot of those events.
And so when I say it's time for council to do our side, I think that's exactly what I'm talking about. So envisioning what phases would be appropriate.
And my suggestion would be a dual approach. So we still need to partner with Debs of the world, Ken Goodyears of the world, Davis of the world, and look at, it's okay to talk about these aspirational things, but let's put together a strategy that focuses on exploiting what we do have now to get us there? Because this is amazing. This is a game changer. Think about it. You add a 124-room hotel, you add this, you add more restaurants on Main Street. You're talking about a major draw to Radford. So I get that. But I'll be honest, my experience running large properties, I've had events. I want this, but I had to start smaller to get a 10,000 person event, then to build it up to a 20,000 person event. I can't start here. And so I think having a dual approach, partner with our partners from Rec Center, from tourism, from city manager, looking at how do we exploit what we do currently have, like you said last week, your bird in the hand, two birds in the bush analogy, and then also looking at, as we're going down this path of leveraging what we have and exploiting it, what are our phases to get us here? Is it the first iteration with the big stage or the small farmers market and layering those pieces together versus trying to go for a home run with this huge aspirational plan? I'd be more inclined for, let's leverage what we have, leverage our existing resources.
Well, let me ask you to do something for us. You're a representative on the rec board. If you guys can take that back for their next month's meeting to talk about all those potential tourism-related pieces with softball and baseball and basketball and all those things, to what something that might look like, and have that for our work session.
And I
as
don't
well.
see it being exclusive, that we can't exploit what we currently have and continue to build assets and
Well, that's my
things.
dual- that's my suggestion for a dual approach.
So we can
Exactly.
do, I
Yeah.
mean, we can look at it as an umbrella approach. I think you're right. I think we have assets that we need to continue to benefit from and to grow with. But I see this as something that you can do in conjunction. And the point of the phases was truly because we did not, we have a school build, we have some other things. So we knew we didn't want to take on this entire project. That's why when we approached them, we said, give us these tiers of what might be realistic to start. And it might be the legacy of other councils to put in those rest of the pieces as the additional revenue
Exactly.
comes in. So we're trying to be, I think, very conservative going into this. That's why you see the phases. But I am not in disagreement that we still have other resources within our community that we certainly should be able to see more from.
I agree, thank
And
you.
I will just add one more thought to this as we go. A lot of communities are evaluating what they do to drive people to their community. And there will be value in being first to market with an opportunity, particularly for the New River Valley. So this is just something for us to keep in mind. Barry, thank you so much. This has been great. As you see, it stimulated a lot of conversation, and we are so appreciative of you. We'll see you back here soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. David, what do you have for us this evening?
Just a couple of things. One, and Barry, thank you so much. We appreciate, it's been a pleasure for our staff to work with Barry. We got going on this early, and then COVID hit, so we got a little bit behind, so I'm glad we're returning back. It's a number of different things and a number of different items that you all brought up tonight that can play a role in this. I think as we're seeing the positive news and more vaccinations and the numbers dropping off and as things are moving forward, we're seeing some positive things in our economy. Some announcements coming, some things like that we're really, really excited about. Businesses, as they start to reopen, as the weather gets warmer and people are able to get outside, and the creativity that our community and others have done, I think it's very inspirational, and I think it's something that's going to really charge and drive everybody to start going the other way again. And I'm excited and optimistic about that. Deb's got some really positive things going as well. Looks like we're going to be able to move forward with our tubing project down on the river, and once we get that underway. So a number of different things that as we get back together, talk about this in the coming weeks, talk about economic development aspects, I think we're going to have some really positive things to bring forward. So I want to let you know about that. Also, not forgetting about our capital items, University Drive Bridge project went out to bid today. It'd be about 30 days for that to come back in. Council will award that bid once we look at it and make recommendations, probably sometime in April. Notice to proceed will be roughly May, and they're going to do the project during the summer months.
Do you not anticipate us starting any earlier than June with that?
They can't get going any earlier than that. The notice to proceed will be the 17th, and it probably takes a couple of weeks to get mobilized. So we should be okay, and we'll be working with the university on when move-in occurs and the return back in the fall.
Okay.
So we've got that going. And then also, you're going to see the Tyler East Main project, as you know, has been continuing to be a planning project. There's a notice to be a notice. I don't know exactly, y'all help me, a save the date basically. So you're gonna see an advertisement about the project, but it's basically saying the city's working on a project, and we're gonna let you know about that project a little later on. It's part of VDOT's new standards, and as you know, this is a VDOT funded, mostly a VDOT funded project. So just so the public knows, and you all know, we've talked about this a little bit.
So just to clarify for those that may not know, this is the project up near the Radford Early Learning Child Care Center that would potentially connect Tyler Avenue down to East Main Street. That there's a general plan in place for about 1,000 feet of this road. Wouldn't start until the 22-23 budget year at the earliest, correct?
Correct. Planning over the next year, right-of-way acquisition, and then the project will be underway. And what this will do is kind of set a footprint so that the road can be extended and open more housing and more commercial and those kinds of things. So real positive. I mean, you all are planting seeds for things to be ready to go for development, down the road, hopefully sooner rather than later. But all of these are positive pieces. So just want to let you know about those. It's been a busy past couple of months. I'm trying to think which things. Y'all know how rattled I am most of the time. We got something turning out every moment. So my staff has finally got to see me some, so they like that part. But anyway, some positive things going on. So keep you.
And next time, we're going to have Kim join us for an economic development report and just sort of let us know what's going on and give us some good food for thought as well.
Okay.
Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Naomi, what do you have?
All right, I've got a couple of things tonight. So first, a few things related to the schools. Some of you might have recently read in the Roanoke Times a story about a group of Radford residents, educators, and bird lovers who are coming together to build a new chimney tower for migrating chimney swifts at McHarg Elementary School. These swifts have nested in the chimney tower at McHarg Elementary, I was amazed to learn, since 1957. But due to the new construction of the school, the tower had to come down. So rather than leave these birds without a home, this group of people are building a brand new tower for the birds. So when they come back to Radford in April, they will have a home. This tower is going to have a webcam available so that students in McHarg can actually learn about the birds in their native habitat. And it's going to be a wonderful investment in the city. So if you are willing to make a donation, you can do so. The group of organizers did meet their first financial goal today, but they may need a few extra expenses to extend electricity to the tower. So if you're willing to make a donation, you may do so at the Radford City Schools Partners for Excellence website. And just use the drop-down menu to direct donations to the Chimney Swift project. And I would also, in the same vein, like to take a moment to highlight some of the accomplishments that have been coming from our students, because I could not help but notice that our Radford High School academic teams are doing remarkable things, and they've done a great job over the last few weeks. So here we go. Congratulations, first of all, to the Radford High School Math MAC team, who was a runner-up at the Eastern MAC tournament. And if you've never seen a Math MAC tournament, these kids are wizards, just brilliant and genius. I'd also like to congratulate the all-around MAC team who took first place in the tournament. I'd like to take a moment to congratulate the Scholastic Bowl team who won the region and are on the way to the state tournament on March 20th. And last but not least, congratulations to the Radford High School forensics team who won the regional tournament and are also on their way to a state tournament coming up on March 27th. So well done to everyone. Good luck, break a leg, and congratulations on your hard work and all of the accomplishments that you have achieved. So finally, and last but not least, I would like to say Happy International Women's Day. International Women's Day is a global celebration for the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women, and it actually first began back in 1911. This year's theme for the celebration is Choose to Challenge. And to quote the International Women's Day Foundation, we can all choose to challenge and call out gender bias and inequality. We can all choose to seek out and celebrate women's achievements. Collectively, we can help to create an inclusive world. It's not always easy to choose to challenge. Sometimes it can be hard to stand up for yourself or for others, but it's because of people who make those hard choices to demand gender equality that we are able to make progress. And so now I also choose to challenge gender bias and inequality wherever I see it for my own daughter, and I encourage everyone to do the same. So thank you all, and good night.
Thank you very much. Jesse, what do you have?
Well, I think my main thing this evening is really more of a plea to the members of our community to please be active and stay involved with what we're doing. We have the opening with Board of Zoning Appeals. If you're interested, please let us know. The amphitheater, with us having a work session, please weigh in and let us know your thoughts. And especially this work session is a great opportunity to kind of see us work through things. And I was kind of wondering, because I know we have a lot of people in the community that are interested in this, and COVID makes things a little more complicated to fill the place. While we're having a work session, is there a way to take community questions during that time? So as we're meeting, if people are watching and they have an idea or a question, that we could address that while we're doing a work session?
We'll work on that.
I just think because it is a big investment and it does impact the community members in such a broad way, I would love to have a more interactive work session than just our talking heads. You know, we really are more reflective of what we're taking in from the community. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up is I saw something today about a citizen that was very happy because they sent an email, I think it was to the mayor, about needing gravel in their alley. And they were just so extremely grateful. And those are the easy fixes sometimes. Those are the give me's. So again, kind of a call out to the community members. I know one time I had a call about an alley. I went and looked at it and kicked around a few rocks and called David. He come and assessed it, and we filled the alley there with some more rocks. So if there's something in the community that you see that needs done, whether it's signage, I know I've called about a couple signs. If it's a branch, we have those calls. If it's the gravel, whatever it is, we really are here to serve the community. So if you see something, notice something that you would like us to evaluate and see if it's possible to do, please do not hesitate, because we only know what we know. So really, I'm kind of putting the burden a little bit on our citizens. We need your input. That's it for me, Mayor.
Thank you. Onassis, what do you have?
Yeah, well, not much tonight. I just want to thank all of our educators out there in Radford. We're in week 2 of our kids returning to school 4 days a week. Naomi, your kid, she's not there yet, but just know that, you know, we parents are happy that the kids are back in school 4 days a week. I pushed for 6 days a week, but that was not an option on the survey. But I would support 6 days a week for school for our kids. So, but yeah. So yeah, just continue to thank the educators. And I just want to thank my fellow council members. I think tonight's discussion about the amphitheater showed great breadth of knowledge, showed great compassion for how we spend the taxpayers' dollars, and it also shows great forethought in terms of our vision of how we want to move Radford forward. So I just want to thank you guys for a great discussion tonight. So.
Thank you. Forrest, what do you have?
Nothing's tonight, Mayor.
Okay. I do want to just comment on a couple of things, a few things that came to fruition over the last couple of weeks. You know, our fire department is so essential to us, just as our police department, our first responders. And since we moved fire and EMS in together as we brought EMS back home, we've recognized that we've needed to do a few things. We're not quite there yet with our ability to either expand the fire department or build a new station or whatever that might end up looking like. But we have been able to get some new furniture, which is good. That's arrived. We want to take care of these folks who take care of us, and I just wanted to bring that up and say thank you to David and the staff, thank you to council for supporting it. They are very important to us. We want to make sure we're doing everything we can for them. A couple other things, the love letters, the Love Works are up downtown. Love has its ups and downs, and so do our letters. So you can go down and get your picture with that, and Mountain Trotter Arts sponsored a wonderful Radford, Love Radford project, and there's beautiful pictures associated with that. Over the course of the next few months, you're going to see more and more. I have to thank Deb and tourism. If folks only knew how long it took us to get to this point, and Deb never gave up, and we want to say thank you to your team, thank you to Sam's Brothers, thank you to the folks who made the signs, everybody who participated. We're so appreciative of that. That's a nice little tourism piece to have right in our downtown as well. And it's part of a bigger spring cleanup. You're going to see, like Jesse mentioned, gravel and paving and all kinds of stuff happening over the next few months. And we are so thankful that we have the opportunity to do those. Our list is long, our time is short, but we will get to things. And I have to credit Street Department, Public Works for all that they do. They're very responsive to the things we have out there. But please, if you do see something, you can email any one of us, message us, let us know where you see something. If you get a picture, that's even better, so we know exactly what we're looking at. And we will make sure we get things taken care of for you and in good shape. I always like to do this in the spring, hashtag Refresh Radford. As we start to freshen up and clean things up, let's share those images. Let's showcase those spaces. We've got a lot of projects coming in the next 6 months. Particularly excited about the West End street treatments we're going to be doing with the sidewalks. Some of those sidewalks are 80 years old. Wow. And we're going to be replacing those. That's been long in the works. We got in the budget last year to do that. We've been working on some lighting. We're working on some landscaping with that. And then finally, our farmers market actually begins April 17th, so about 6 weeks from now. They're going to have a vendor meeting on March 27th. If you go to their Facebook page, you can get more information on that. The farmers market will be on Saturdays again at 401 West Main Street. So you'll be able to see them at the New River Valley Community Action site in our VCS. And it's adjacent to our downtown area, which is great in West End. Provides a lot of opportunity. But they'll be going from April 17th to October 30th. Thank you to David and Kim, Deb, Melissa, Jenny. Thank you to all the staff. You all do so much that folks don't see. There's a lot of challenges with everything going on. Thank you to Chief Dodson and the entire police force. Thank you to everyone that works for this city. Thank you to the council. This is International Women's Day, as Naomi mentioned. It's also Women's History Month. And as such, we want to feature different women throughout the course of the month. I'm trying to do a little something on Wednesdays to talk about Women's History Wednesday in Radford. And this week, we're going to be talking about Margaret Duncan. She was Radford's first woman mayor. She served in the early 70s. And when you read the news article that I'm going to be able to share thanks to the good folks at the Radford Public Library, I think you're going to be blown away not only with her service, but her vision for this city. If it's not for her, I'm going to say, even though it's a team effort, Bissett Park likely wouldn't have happened. For years, that bottom land was called Margaret's Bottom, derisively. She was a champion for that. The gazebo in the park is named in her honor for a reason. Without her, that park likely wouldn't have happened. And I'm excited to share more information about her. And with that, we will go on and accept a motion to close. Do we have a motion to adjourn? So moved. A motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say good night.
Good night.
Thank you. If you would talk with Rec Commission about what some of those